You are sitting in a waiting room. Nothing is happening. The chairs are uncomfortable. Your phone is dead. And within 60 seconds, something strange begins to happen inside your brain. A feeling creeps in that has no obvious cause, no pain, no hunger, no threat. Just a slow, crawling discomfort that makes you want to do literally anything other than sit still. That feeling has a name, and scientists are only now beginning to understand why it might be one of the most uniquely human experiences on the planet. Boredom is not laziness, it is not a character flaw, it is not what happens when unproductive people run out of things to do. It is a deeply complex neurological state that researchers believe may be exclusive to the human species. And the reason it exists inside you, right now, hidden beneath everything you do every single day, is far stranger than you think. Start with the basics. What actually is boredom? Most people assume they know. But when psychologists began studying it seriously in the 1980s, they ran into an immediate problem. Boredom was almost impossible to define. It was not sadness. It was not frustration. It was not tiredness. Researcher John Eastwood at York University described it as a failure of attention. Your brain wants to engage with something meaningful. It cannot find it, and so it generates a specific kind of distress signal. That signal is boredom. But here is where it gets interesting. Nearly every animal on Earth can experience something like restlessness. A caged lion paces. A dog left alone chews furniture. A crow with nothing to do will pull at wires and shiny objects. But researchers studying animal cognition have found something remarkable. True boredom, the kind that requires a self-aware desire for meaningful stimulation, appears to require a level of metacognition that most animals simply do not have. You have to be able to think about your own thinking. You have to notice that your mind is not engaged and feel distressed about that absence. That is an extraordinarily sophisticated operation, and your brain does it automatically, without trying, without even meaning to. Think about what that actually requires. Your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for planning, self-reflection, and imagination, has to simultaneously monitor your current mental state and compare it against some internal standard of what meaningful engagement should feel like. Then, it has to generate a motivational signal, powerful enough to make you act. All of this happens before you are even consciously aware that you are bored. Neuroscientist James Dankert at the University of Waterloo has spent years mapping what happens in the brain during boredom. His research found that boredom activates the default mode network, the same brain system that runs when you daydream, reflect on the past, or imagine the future. In other words, your brain does not go quiet when you're bored. It gets louder. It starts searching. This is the counterintuitive twist that most people never hear. Boredom is not emptiness. It is overflow. Your brain is generating too much searching energy and finding nowhere to put it. Now, go back, way back. About 300,000 years, give or take. Your ancestors are living in small groups across the African savanna. Every waking moment is structured around survival. Finding food, avoiding predators, maintaining social bonds. There's no idle time in the evolutionary sense, because idle time meant vulnerability. And yet, somewhere in that same period, the human brain was developing an extraordinary capacity, the ability to mentally simulate situations that did not yet exist, to imagine futures, to plan for contingencies that had never happened. Anthropologist Kim Sterelny at the Australian National University has argued that this capacity for mental projection, for thinking about things that are not in front of you, was one of the key drivers of human cultural evolution. It allowed your ancestors to plan hunts days in advance, to remember landmarks across vast distances, to teach skills to children who had never yet faced the situation being described. It was, in the most literal sense, a survival superpower. But that same capacity comes with a cost. A brain that is always searching for the next meaningful problem to solve does not stop searching just because there is no immediate problem. When the hunt is over, and the food is eaten, and the fire is burning, and there is nothing left to do, that searching engine keeps running. It scans the environment, it finds nothing urgent, and it generates a signal. Do something. Find something. This matters. This needs your attention. That signal is boredom. and your brain has been generating it for hundreds of thousands of years. Here is where the modern world collides with ancient wiring in a way that would have been completely unimaginable to your ancestors. For most of human history, that boredom signal was relatively rare. Life was full of demands. The searching engine always had something to search for. But somewhere in the last few centuries, and especially in the last few decades, something shifted. For the first time in human history, a significant portion of the species has access to near-infinite stimulation at any moment. A screen in your pocket, a feed that never ends, content engineered by entire teams of people specifically to keep your searching engine engaged. And yet, paradoxically, rates of boredom have not gone down. Studies suggest they have gone up. Psychologist Sandy Mann at the University of Central Lancashire has researched this extensively. Her findings point to a troubling pattern. The more stimulation people consume, the higher their threshold for what counts as engaging becomes. Your brain recalibrates. What once satisfied the searching engine no longer satisfies it. The feed that used to feel engaging starts to feel hollow, and you find yourself scrolling not because you are enjoying it, but because stopping feels worse. You are bored, even while consuming more content than any human in history ever had access to. That is not a coincidence. That is your ancient brain misfiring in a world it was never designed for. But here is the part that almost no one talks about. Boredom, when it works correctly, is not a problem. It is a tool. Researcher Sandy Mann's most counterintuitive finding was this. People who were allowed to be bored, truly bored, before completing a creative task consistently outperformed people who were not. Boredom in its natural state, before the screen appears, before the podcast starts, before the distraction arrives, forces the default mode network into high gear. It generates ideas, it makes unexpected connections, it rehearses social scenarios, imagines new approaches, revisits unsolved problems from new angles. Boredom, left alone to do its work, is one of the most creative states the human brain can enter. Your ancestors, sitting around a fire with nothing to do, were not wasting time. They were incubating, planning, imagining. The discomfort they felt was the same discomfort you feel in a waiting room with a dead phone. But they did not have the option to escape it instantly, so they sat with it, and their brains went to work. There is a reason some of the most significant ideas in human history reportedly came during moments of apparent idleness. The mathematician Henri Poincaré famously described the solution to a major theorem arriving suddenly while he was stepping onto a bus, after weeks of conscious effort had failed. The insight came from beneath. It came from the searching engine that never turns off, running quietly in the background, doing its work in the spaces between stimulation. Boredom was not the obstacle to the insight. It was the corridor through which the insight traveled, and this is what the research keeps pointing back to. Boredom is not a bug in the human operating system. It is one of its most sophisticated features. It is the brain's way of saying that the current situation is beneath your capacity for engagement. It is a motivational signal that has driven humans to create art, build tools, form complex societies, and imagine futures that did not yet exist. Every invention, every story, every monument your species has ever produced began with a mind that felt the pull of boredom and responded to it by building something. The problem is not boredom itself. The problem is that for the first time in history, you have been given the ability to silence that signal the instant it appears, and every time you do, you interrupt a process your brain has been running for 300,000 years. So the next time you are sitting in a waiting room with nothing to do and that familiar crawling discomfort begins to rise, you might try something different. Do not reach for the phone. Do not fill the silence. Just sit with it for a moment. Let the searching engine run. Let it scan and find nothing and begin to turn inward. Because what comes next, in that uncomfortable, ancient, deeply human silence, might be exactly what it was always meant to find. You thought boredom was the problem, but it was the waiting room that was empty. Your mind never was. If your brain felt something watching this, hit like, subscribe, because every week, something you do every single day turns out to have a stranger explanation than you ever imagined. And share this with one person who can never sit still without reaching for their phone. They will finally understand why. And honestly, so will you.